Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha, and I'm here with our spiritual family that we have here. And we're reading through the Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse, reading through the Bhagavad Gita and efforts to transform our hearts. Right? That's what we're in the business of here. Not we're not here to like be scholarly or know things. I mean, it's useful to know things, but only to the degree that our heart is transformed. And that's what we're doing here together every Monday, Thursday, 7:30 a.m. And we have a really nice verse that we're going to do today. We're just doing one verse today. Um, and there's a lot that comes from this verse and I think we'll find it very relatable to our lives as well, this general principle that we're going to talk about today. So I'm looking forward to unpacking that with you. But before we do that, Shakti, can you recite our prayers for us?
Oh, I'm honored. Om Jnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kara Mayam Dandati Sva Pandatikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitams Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancha Garungi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Prananami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavembhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advitya Garahara Shivasari Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
So nice. Thank you. Okay, we are starting today in chapter 8, text 6. So that's chapter 8, text 6. And whenever you're ready, Stella, can you read us today's verse?
Yes. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail.
Thank you. So if we remember in the last class, we talked about text 5, which is kind of like the specific here. You know, when he says, when he promises us, when Krishna promises us that if you remember him at the time of death, that you'll attain him, right? That you'll go back to the spiritual world if you remember him at the time of death. So that was kind of like the zoom in. Now text 6 is kind of like more the general principle. And this is what we're really going to unpack, this general principle that whatever you're thinking about at the time of death, that's that state you attain. And again, this isn't like a superficial thing. It's not just like you have a fleeting thought and then that's what you're going to obtain. It's more of a reflection of what you valued throughout life because at that time, at that really intense time, I mean, the most intense time of your life, many would say, death. This most fearful time, the most, it just brings up so much. What's going to come to your mind is what you valued the most throughout your life. And what you valued most throughout your life is what you've invested the most energy in and the most time and the most care and the most concern, right? So that's what this is this fundamental principle. sometimes called the law of last thought, right? And that is whatever state of being that one remembers at the time of death, that state they will attain, right? So we've all heard this saying, like the cliche, like our thoughts shape our actions, and our actions shape our destinies, right? And the Bhagavad Gita gives this like an even deeper reaching truth, right? It's like expanding this idea beyond just actions in this life, right? But it's expanding, it's carrying it forward from this life to the next, which makes sense, right? Because our soul's on an eternal journey, and we're all spiritual beings. So we see this play out in this gross manifestation, right? We see it in the subtle and the gross levels. This is a principle that we see act out, right? Whatever we're thinking about, we're one step away from acting upon, and then our actions, our cumulative effect of our actions, it defines our destiny, right? We see this as we go through our material existence. So this is just like taking it one step further and saying, no, this principle continues for your soul's eternal journey, and that whatever your consciousness is focused on at that final time is going to impact, is going to determine really what the kind of body that you get next, right? Or your destination, right? Your karma, your gunas determine your body like that. Right. And so it's showing how our thoughts, our actions, our consciousness operate on the subtle level, on the gross level, and on the spiritual level. Right? So this is a general principle that we learn as we go through life, and this is just expanding it from this life to the next, and expanding it from just the subtle gross level to the spiritual level. Right? Because again, we're not these bodies. We have a tendency to overly identify with these bodies. In fact, what's real to us is like birth to death. That's all. That's like that's what's real to us. Right? But the more that we can get in touch with our spiritual self, right? The more that we can wake up to that reality, we realize that we're actually eternal souls, right? And we're actually eternal souls just temporarily residing in these bodies. And when this body perishes, we're carried to another one, right? And that's according to the subtle laws of nature, right? All operating under this divine supervision. Right? And what determines that, again, is our state of consciousness at the time of death. Right? So our subtle body, when we say subtle body, what we're talking about here is mind, intelligence, ego. Right? That's our subtle body. It carries our impressions, our desires, our attachments, right? And these impressions form the template for our next body and our circumstances. Right? So if we spend our lives like obsessing over certain material cravings, right? Or constantly chasing like the next high, right? We'll get a body that's suited to those desires. And again, we see the same principle act out in a smaller scale in our lives. Like if you desire, a muscular body, you go to the gym, you work out every day, your body is suited to that. Right? It's like our thoughts create our actions, create our destiny. So we see that it's very obvious on the gross material level. We see that. So again, the same principle, it's just like being extrapolated, like zoomed out to the spiritual levels, and not limited to just this life. Right? Because our soul is eternal, and we are actually a soul. Right? So the human form is a opportunity, right? To get this human body. It's such an opportunity because this species of life is uniquely capable of higher spiritual realization. Right? Like my dog can sit next to me when I chant, but my dog isn't really connecting in the same way. Their consciousness isn't to that place. Right? They're definitely getting the benefit. But at the same time, they don't have that capability of higher spiritual realization, right? So therefore, our human bodies, we have that capacity, right? So it's meant for something far greater than just indulgence or more like refined forms of indulgence. Like my dog eats dog food out of a bowl. I eat, a little bit more refined food from a plate on the table. Like, but ultimately, it's this, we're both eating, right? We both enjoy these same pleasures. So what's the difference there? The human body is capable of higher spiritual realization, right? And if we waste that opportunity, then we're going to have to come back again and again, right? In lower forms before returning to the human level and gaining another chance at liberation. So if like my whole life is just focused on the next great thing that I can eat, and that is like the center of my life, then I'll get a body that's suited to carry out that desire, right? That thought is going to shape my action, is going to shape my destiny. And this, again, carries out eternally. So when we really can kind of hone in on this, we can get really real about how my daily desires or habits, right, are shaping the kind of consciousness that I'm cultivating. And sometimes we don't even realize it in this culture, in this society. At my workplace, they have music. They have like background music in the office. And I don't really listen to music anymore besides like spiritual music. So this was a little bit like shocking. And I'm kind of like remembering, because these are all the songs I kind of grew up on, how like sexual some of these songs are. It's like just like the messages in them. I think like Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On came on the other day, and I was like, I can't believe this is in the office. But like these things that we're exposed to, that we hear, that we watch, like these are the things that are shaping our consciousness, right? And so we have to be very careful, because sometimes, again, we don't even realize it, that what we're becoming because of what we're taking in, right? So I want to bring this back to the story from the Bhagavatam that really brings this home. Many of you probably know this story. This story of King Bharata, right? King Bharata, he was a highly advanced yogi. He renounced his royal life to focus on spiritual practice. So he was like a really elevated soul. But what happened is, near the end of his life, he was out in the forest, and he got attached to this deer. And this attachment to this deer, it just dominated his final thought. I mean, it shows how like quickly, just this can creep in, this tendency of attachment to material things, right? And how quickly it can just take over our consciousness. And therefore that was what he was attached to at his time of death. And in the story, again, it shows how our thoughts, our desires, our emotions, that's what's shaping our next physical form, right? And therefore, in his next life, he became a deer, right? Because that's what he was focused on. And again, this can sound a little bit like strange, right? If this is like kind of a foreign concept, and it is to most of us, because, well, I mean, really to all of us, because this isn't something that we like experience or we see in this lifetime that like we can directly relate to. But if we break it down, we see that it's really a principle that we see all the time, that's just, again, extrapolated to the spiritual realm and applied to the eternal soul. And this is how it plays out. Right? And when we can realize this, we really understand the gravity of what we're working with here. Right? And how important it is to try to direct our thoughts, our consciousness, to things that will uplift us. Right? Because the subtle becomes the template for the gross. Right? So again, it's good for us to all think about, like, what's my deer? Right? Like in other words, like what small attachment or distraction can pull my mind away from God? Right? And how can I care about the world and people around me without becoming attached? right? That's a tricky one, especially for like, a lot of us that are mothers. I feel like this is something just you just wrestle with for life. It's like Krishna's ultimate test. It's like Krishna's ultimate like, here, try this out. Right? We give you this person to care for that like, is like shares your, blood and try not to get overly attached and start believing that this person is yours. And when you start believing that, I'll show you how much that's not true. Right? So this is for all of us to reflect, right? What's my dear? And what practices help me notice when my mind is drifting into attachment? Because sometimes we don't even realize how attached we are. Sometimes we don't even realize until that thing that we're attached to is like changing or is like getting further away from us or is threatened. Right? Sometimes we can even like trick ourselves into thinking like, oh no, I'd be okay if this ended or if this was over. Anybody else do that? I do that. I have a tendency to do that. And then when it actually happens, it's like, ouch, that one hurt much more than I thought it would. Right? So this is for us all to kind of reflect on. Does anybody have anything to share around this? Let's see,
I just
Aaron.
want to share quickly.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
great. We have a lot of shares. Awesome. I'm ready. Let's go
Um,
Mariah, Aaron, and then Maria.
I have to go into work here in a few minutes, but I don't know about tips on noticing when I'm feeling attached. I don't notice until it's like right in my face, and I'm like, why am I acting like a crazy person? Not really. You like get that feeling inside. You're like, man, this is bothering me way more than it should.
Yeah.
And then I kind of work through it. But I just want to speak on like being a parent and what I do, and it's only on like the cognitive on the mental level is just like constantly try to remember like okay, she's Krishna's like, or just this is Krishna's giving me this to care for. It's like, but also I've understood from like some of our spiritual teachers in our movement, it's like Krishna doesn't want us to artificially renounce our attachments. It's almost like he gives that to us to allow us to work through it, in this life. So it's like we receive a child. This is just one aspect, like one example. Like we get the child so that we can go through the motion, so that at the end of life we can renounce it more properly. So we're not just like overly hankering or lamenting about it. It's like you do your duty, and that's what you do your duty with care, but also understanding that it's like it is ultimately Krishna's, like just constantly trying to remind yourself that, or trying to engage that relationship in Krishna conscious activities as much as you can, with depending on where you're at. And ultimately that will help you have the detachment gradually. It's not like, that's what I'm learning, because for me I was on the other end of the spectrum before in my life, where it was like, well, everything's just crappy and none of this matters, and I'm just going to artificially detach. And I had to like relearn that, like, no, you do it, and you do it as best as you can with trying to incorporate Krishna into it. And that's what's going to give you the gradual detachment, so you can properly renounce it. So you're not just hankering or lamenting over it,
Mm.
or like stuffing it inside. Like for me, it was like, okay, well, a lot of my relationships weren't great, so I'm just going to detach from relationships and renounce them. But then I'm like actually just burying a need. It was a need.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm learning, and just wanted to share that. Thank you.
That's a beautiful point. Yeah, it's a journey and it's not something you can just turn off like a light switch. So you feel it, great. And then this is why we even have like these regulations in spiritual life. You you for your family to be like a container for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron,
Hey Krishna, that was really beautiful, Mariah. You're so wise. Um, I feel like I have a mentor who talks all the time about like just
about what? Your service seems to be a little bit spotty, Aaron, and you just froze.
not,
Aaron,
and not trying to pretend that we're. Oh, sorry.
your service was just a little
Can you not
spotty.
hear me?
Can you repeat that? You said you have a mentor that talks about
Is it better now?
let's see. It seems to be.
Okay. Just like talks about the importance of like actually feeling what you're feeling and
Mm,
sitting with it and being with it and not trying to we constantly read like not trying to imitate and not trying to be on a level that we're not. And like that if the point is to, shed these feelings or shed this body and everything, it's like we can't do that until we work through those things. Um, so it's so sweet that Mariah is like using motherhood to test that out. That's amazing. And I also just wanted to share that Achyuta Gopi's kirtan from Radha Dash Mellows from this year, which is on like Apple Music and all the platforms, YouTube. She does a brief story of King Bharat, um, and talks about really beautifully talks about how the deer is not the problem, and we love to blame the deer, um, and that his real problem was lack of devotee association, and just
mm,
really hammers in that point of devotee association. And I love that so much because I love you asking like what's our dear, because that whatever it is not the actual problem in and of
mm,
itself, right? It's like our relationship to it or our reaction or attachment to it, um, and and then trying to level that up, right, with more spiritual things or more devotee association. But um, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
wow, that's profound. Love that. The deer is not the problem. So nice. Thank you, Aaron. Maria, what do you have for us?
Uh, yes, I'm living in somebody else's house, renting a room, because I wanted to start getting rid of material possessions and sort of simplify my life more. Plus, I needed to be back in Pittsburgh, I guess. Anyways, so I'm living in Diana's house, and she has a cat named Hatter. And this cat is just so precious. And he comes over and he sits on my foot and wants to be petted. And I'm really getting attached to her. He's precious. So I wanted to share that, but I also wanted to share that there's a devotee who recently died at New Vrindavan a couple days ago. And I saw Nityadita was posting about how he crossed over, how he had dementia to the point that he couldn't remember anything except uh, Hare Krishna.
Wow.
And they were playing chants for him as he was crossing over, and everybody was visiting him to join in the chants and help guide this wonderful man onwards. And then he crossed over a couple mornings ago, I guess. I just thought
Wow.
that was so beautiful.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Thanks for sharing. What a perfect death.
Oh, yeah.
And something that for most people in this culture, dementia, that's, you know, terrible. That's like the worst thing ever. That's a terrible death. But to have the holy name and that's all you have at the end, I mean, that's so sweet. And that doesn't happen by accident or mistake. That is the reflection of a lifetime spent in relationship with the holy name. Right. Yeah. Thank you. Shakti.
I wasn't gonna share. I was like, should I? Just because I feel like I talk too much. Want to give opportunity to others to share. But Maria, when you shared, I'm just finding this because in my Burlington group here, where my little group, there's an older gentleman who I think he had like maybe Parkinson's, and he uh he came to temple every week, and it was like a makeshift temple, and we would always give him stuff to read, and he left his body. Um, I think it was either yesterday or 2 days ago, and and people are offering condolences, but like his son said, is our sincere prayers for his onward journey. Like they're talking about how he left his body early this morning in the most auspicious month of Kartik and chanting Hare Krishna. Like it's the I just it's looking at death in such a different way, um,
Hmm.
and such a different connection. And I love what Aaron said, that it isn't the deer. It really is. It's really me. It's
Hmm.
with my son. Like I had this whole thing with him before, and I need to let go of him, and I'm having such a hard time. And he's like, I don't understand. You said you want me to be with my friends, and I'm like, no, I do, but and I kept trying to like re-explain the insanity that's in my head, that sick ownership that I think I owe him. He kept saying, but I don't understand, because he knows. And I'm like, but no, it's da 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 da. And like, and then I just said, what? You're right. Like, I don't own you, and you should be with your friends, and you don't have to come by and sit with mommy for an hour. He's 19. But boy, it, like talking about it like this is one thing. Feeling it and trying to like sever that cord, and let him be him, because he's not mine. Um, it's hard. It's really hard. And but it's such a lesson. As sad as I am right in this moment talking about it, it teaches me such the lesson that if he's not mine, which is like the deepest rooted connection in my soul, then all these other things. And I'm like, what about then? Like, who cares? If my
Hmm.
son is not mine, then who cares about the car, the leggings, the house, the this, the that, whatever. If my son is
Wow.
not mine, to me, like that's the biggest like heartbreak in my world. So everything else is sort of like, so it's what you said, Radha. It's the zooming out, being all the way over here and looking like, here I am doing, my son didn't pop by and say hello, and I'm all, oh my God, it's all, and he's just saying, Mom, I'm like, I'm just being 19. I'm just doing what I do at 19. It's what boys do. And I'm like trying to over explain how, no, you should be with your mother. You should see your mother. You should go. What am I doing? And it's like I'm learning. I'm really learning, and I pray like this whole week during Kartik, I've been asking Krishna for the strength to understand and hear that he's not mine, so that I don't have to try and keep re-explaining it to him that
Hmm.
he is mine when he's not, if that makes any
Wow.
sense.
Amazing. Such deep realizations. And you're so fortunate to have this relationship with God to to give you shelter through this. Because that, just like you said, we'll realize one day or another that's all we have, or we'll be forced to when that time comes, right? So cultivate it now. And these things can be sweet, sweet lessons. Wow. Thank you, Shakti. No, when I was getting ready, well, thinking about having kids, a part of me like didn't want to have them because I didn't want to have that big attachment. Because you hear this everywhere, this is the biggest attachment. And I was like, no, I'm pretty good now. I don't have a lot of attachments. I'm focused on my spiritual. But all of my teachers encouraged me to have them, and including my guru. He said, please have babies. So we need these lessons because they're in us, just like everybody, Aaron's saying, you're all saying, it's in us, this attachment to, and we have to have these lessons in our lives to, just like Mariah said, get through them, to learn. Yeah, thank you. Stella.
Um, yeah, so I feel all of that. Everyone is saying. I mean, I have three kids, but I've been learning, and they're all in their 30s. But I've been learning, especially very recently. But I've been trying to cultivate that that they belong to Krishna. So, you know, that's who that's who their closest relationship actually is with. And if I can be near Krishna and remember Krishna, then I can be near them and remember them because they belong to Krishna. So if I can approach my ownership of them, as actually part of, Krishna's world, like if we're all in Krishna's palace together, then I don't need to own them personally. I'll still it's eternal relationships if everybody's connected to Krishna. So um they are protected by Krishna, not me, not my husband. We're fallible soldiers in their fights, but they, when you put Krishna at the center, then even that maternal attachment is really like I don't know it's like I'm trusting Krishna that he is the father and mother to my children, and how much better he is at it than me. So I feel like if I can stay close to Krishna and Krishna stay close to my kids, then we're all tied up together, and I don't need to even detach from them because Krishna's part of their heart and their journey. So whether, eventually, I don't know where they're, like we giving up that sense of time, eventually we're all tied up together. They have devotee association. They've been trained in Krishna consciousness, not like, I mean, from very young learning this stuff. So it's deep in them. It should be deep in us. And I find that pain of not being there all in all is lessened by knowing that they are Krishna's true delight. How beautiful is that? They're his. And if they're his, then they're also mine because I'm also Krishna's, and Krishna is ours. He's mine and he's yours and he's theirs, and I'll stop talking.
Wow. Such profound realizations that you really just get from going through it. It's such a testament. You go through it. You've probably had a lot of different stops along the way, a lot of different like realizations that have kind of like built on each other and ones that maybe weren't so grand. And then you till you yeah, you're nodding your head. It's that's the journey, right? Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Stella. So nice. Wow, you guys are so insightful today. Appreciate
Can I
all
say
the
something?
yeah. Who is this Sukdai?
Kay,
Kay. Okay, let's hear Kay. There you are. Yes.
I, I'm attached to my mother who is in her mid 70s, and then, of course, to my daughter who is 22. And I always have this thought that, oh, I hope she finds somebody caring, loving, this, that, like my husband. But then of course, about the attachment and how not to be attached and all. And recently I heard in the satsang, one of the satsangs, that how much ever we love our kids, God, Krishna loves million times more.
Mm,
So then why worry?
mm,
So I thought
yeah.
that was such a nice thing, that why do we worry? Because after all, our kids are not our kids, they are his kids. So if he loves million times more, then let's not be that attached. That is the thought I'm giving it to myself.
Mm, so nice. Thank you. Thank you, Kay. This group is just magical. Appreciate you all and your insights. So nice. Okay, so this brings us to another key insight that we can get from this verse, which is what we believe also shapes what we perceive. Right? And this is another thing we see play out all the time. Like if we believe people are untrustworthy, right? We notice every time someone lets us down, right? And we overlook kindness around us, right? Like our beliefs like filter reality. And then put on top of that, like today's digitally connected world, like these filters are stronger than ever, like social media and algorithms, they just feed us content that confirms our biases, right? And this creates like echo chambers where our opinions start to feel like absolute truth. So this is just how this just manifests, right? And then the deeper than this is our belief system. It doesn't just color how we see the world, but then it shapes the reality that we live, right? So at the core, our beliefs center on what we value most, right? What we think will give us the greatest happiness. And everybody think about that. What you think will give you the greatest happiness, right? That's our beliefs center on that, right? And then your whole reality is shaped by that, right? And then this core attachment, it becomes the default object of our thoughts throughout our lives, right? And then ultimately at the moment of death, right? Because the Gita explains that our final thoughts determine that destination, right? So if our deepest attachment is to something material, we remain bound to the material world. Right? Unless we can transform that the material attachment we have to our child to a spiritual attachment to our child, like Stella's talking about, right? Then that even that attachment, if it's on the material level, will keep us bound to the material world. But if our deepest love is for God, right, our consciousness naturally carries us to Him. So this is why Krishna emphasizes this constant remembrance, right? It's not fear-based. It's not a fear-based like rule, like remember me always, right? Don't forget me. No, it's a joyful, life-shaping practice, right? Whatever we cultivate daily will naturally be what comes to mind in that final moment. Right? So this is again an opportunity for us to get real with ourselves and like, what do I truly believe will make me happy? What am I living for? What am I taking shelter of in this material world? right? Because these beliefs, they don't just color our perception, they determine the very course of our next life. Right? And it's okay, just like everybody's kind of sharing. We're all gonna have these things. Okay? We're all gonna look for things to make us happy in this material. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just recognizing where we do this, right? Or what we're taking shelter of, right? And then at the same time, trying to strengthen beliefs that remind me of my spiritual identity. Right? And over time, just through life's natural journey, we'll learn the lessons that we need to learn. If we can cultivate this awareness, just like let's like Shakti's talking about this great awareness about where she is, and I mean that's amazing to have that level of awareness in the moment. You know, when you're feeling all these feelings, to still be able to kind of have that drawn out perspective, that bird's eye view, right? Of where I am, what I'm attached to. And then you see firsthand how these attachments limit even our capacity to love, right? They limit us, right? So we're just kind of cultivating awareness around this. This is how we learn. This is how the journey strengthens us and molds us, right? And at the same time, engaging in activities that endorse, that support, that it strengthen the belief, that remind me of who I actually am, right? Which is my spiritual identity. And this is the last point thing that I want to talk about today. Is I want to kind of like just unpack death for a moment. Right? So just going to put death on the table. It's something that we all have a tendency to be kind of uncomfortable with. We don't always want to talk about, right? Even though we know that it's coming, right? It's like the greatest mystery of life is that we know that it's coming, but nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. Like nobody wants to face it, right? Even like statistics say that like 72% of people die without even writing a will. Right? Like maybe they thought it wouldn't happen to them, or maybe they just didn't want to think about it. But whatever the case, it probably is in one of those, right? And the fact of the matter is that most people focus on living before dying, right? Like checking off their bucket list. I want to swim with the dolphins. I want to see the seven wonders. I want to go skydiving. Whatever's in your bucket list, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, great, nothing wrong with that. But we don't want to get so consumed in that we miss out on this invitation for an even deeper quest, right? And this deeper quest is the journey to die before we die. Okay, now before you like kind of have an ick to that, let me explain what that means, right? And that is exactly what we're talking about here. To truly experience life in its purest beauty, we have to conquer those enemies within, right? Lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, the countless material desires that hold us hostage, right? It's these inner forces that rob us of peace, right? Even if our external lives seem perfect. And without having this inner purification, we remain bound to this cycle, right? That's the cycle of birth and death. We're forced to re-enter the material realm because we still have material desires, right? Our desires shape our actions, shape our destiny. This goes on forever, right? And then we just repeat the same struggles again and again. Nelson Mandela. Do you guys know who he is? Right? His life gives a powerful example of this principle because he was in prison for like almost 30 years. Something insane like that. And during that time, well, I guess okay, so shortly after his release, someone offered him a copy of the Gita. And he smiled and he said, I've already read it. And then that person asked, "Oh, what'd you learn from that?" And he told them, the Gita taught me that if I didn't overcome my bitterness, my hatred, my anger towards my captors, then even though I was walking free from my cell, I would still be imprisoned. Right? So he realized that this true freedom, it's not just physical, it's spiritual. Right? The ability to free oneself from resentment, from pride, from desire. Right? This is dying before dying. right? What what Nelson Mandela was talking about, right? To die before dying, to let go of the lower self so that you can live from a higher one. Right? And we know that in bhakti, to let go of the lower self, that's the process of bhakti. We connect to something so much higher. Right? And we know from bhakti that we have these attachments. If we're attached, soon is going to come fear. Soon is going to come anger, frustration. Right? That's where these anarthas creep in. Right? We get an ego. We have resentment. We have, right? So that's the essence of Krishna's message here, right? We're all prisoners of our own conditioning until we learn to break free from it. So to die before you die means to break those invisible chains and live a life of real freedom, right? Here and beyond. And there's never like an ideal time for this. Right? This is an inside job. It's not something we say, "Oh, I'll start one day." Right? But then one day isn't a day of the week. Right? It's like do it now. Right? This one day could be too late. Right? Remember your eternal identity. Connect with your eternal identity. Connect to something higher. Die before you die. Right? Let go of these things that bind you to the material world. Right? And in the meantime, in doing that, you live more fully and freely, even in this life. Right? So that was kind of a heavy die before die, but it seems like Krishna's talking about death a lot here, right? Chapter 8, Krishna's talking, it's kind of like the theme of the chapter, right? And it makes sense contextually, right? Like the Gita's on the battlefield, death is like literally staring everyone in the face, right? A massive war is about to unfold. Countless people are going to die, right? Including Arjuna's loved ones, which is, if we remember from way back in the first or second chapter, like that was one of the reasons he didn't even want to fight, right? It's because he's not afraid of his own death. He's afraid of the people that he loves death, right? So death, it's definitely contextual. That's where we are in the context. But this discussion of death goes so much deeper than the battlefield, than the setting here, right? It's just like the Gita's message transcends its historical setting. Krishna's teachings on death are meant for all of us, right? It's to prepare us. And then not just for the challenges of life, but for this ultimate transition that we're all going to have to make. Right? And people fear death because they think it means the end. Again, because our finite understanding is like what's real is what I can see, what's right here in front of me. Here's the beginning, there's the end. My body's gone, I'm gone. Right? Everything you know, everything will just stop. Right? Even people who believe in an afterlife still kind of feel a little uneasy, right? Not knowing what that will actually be like. Right? And even for those that understand that the soul's eternal, right? And it moves from one body to another, death's still a big deal. Right? It's something to fear, but it's 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 the moment that determines where the soul goes next. Right? And then what determines that destination, Krishna says it's our consciousness. But the point is here that death can even be something much more than that. It can be sweet. Right? If we've spent our life cultivating this relationship, right, connecting to something higher, death is just like a calling back home. Right? And a couple of you have talked about people that have invested their life in connecting with spirit, and then at that final moment, they feel almost like held, right? Like embraced. Right? That is death for a spiritual person. It doesn't have to be this terrifying, uncertain thing. Not if you're spiritualist. It can be a sweet thing. Right? So this is why Krishna is spending so much time explaining what happens in that moment, right? How to prepare for it, how to make it a doorway, right? Not into darkness, but into light. because he wants to equip Arjuna and all of us with the knowledge and the spiritual tools to face death, right? Not with fear, but with clarity, with grace, with confidence, right? With warmth. It can be that. And that's what we're learning here. So in that way, it's sweet that Krishna spends so much time, sharing this knowledge, helping us prepare for this inevitable moment that is fearful for most, but doesn't have to be if we spend our life cultivating that relationship. So what do you guys think? Kay, please share.
I love listening about death because it's inevitable and we need to know. Like in so many lectures, we learn that this is the gross body, and then there is a subtle body that we take with us, the intelligence, mind, ego, and uh, I loved what you said, dying before dying. I mean, if Nelson Mandela was prisoned for 30 years, and if he can have that kind of attitude, then why are we holding on to so many attachments, so many resentments, so many desires? Uh, we have to learn a lot and prepare for the death. And I loved today's thing that somebody left the body and so blessed that he forgot everything but Hare Krishna. I mean, that is such a big blessing. So this is such an eye-opener lecture today, and I mean, we have to be prepared. We have to keep on preparing every day.
Yeah.
It was so nice.
Yeah, thank you for the final test. And it's nice to talk about
For the
death too,
fun.
it's like being sweet, right? Not like scary or uncertain or like that's like such a bleak life. You're just like
Yeah,
trying to prevent yourself from getting to that place because it is full of, right? But to think it is like we're preparing for the final test, and that final test is sweet if we
we.
adequately
I have,
prepare.
yeah, adequately prepared, and I have like so many family members in our family. They are over 75, over 80. And, whenever I sit down and I mean, whenever we are sitting down talking about death, they don't even want to talk about death.
Hmm.
They don't want to hear about anything. They say their thing is like we do our bhakti and they know for sure that they'll be good to go. But there is so much deep to know and to talk about. It would be nice to talk. Like today's
Hmm.
example of Nelson Mandela, it would be so nice to sit and talk with them. That look,
Hmm.
we are, because they still have desires. They still want that big gold chain with that pendant, with that thing. So what are we? I mean, we are 80, 85, but we still are desiring for so many things.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I can relate to
Hey,
that.
hey,
Sutta.
Rada. Yeah,
Yeah.
hi. I mean, I love the topic of death and dying, and I'm never afraid of talking about it.
Oh, wow.
But in my mind, I was thinking, if we can, or how can we help the dying to the consciousness of that person dying if we can? How do we how can we help? Because like the last thoughts is what you carry through.
Hmm.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, and I've seen it done before. Many times we're doing it for the ones who are not like sudden death, but who are dying. I know the last sense that goes is hearing. So what we do in our custom is we always play all these bhajans and religious chant and Krishna chant, and we're hoping that they're listening and hearing to that, and hoping that will help in their consciousness as they take that final journey. So I was sitting here listening to everything, so nicely put, but how do we help someone? And you're hoping that when your time comes and someone, if you have to go that way, not suddenly, but you go that way, that someone may be able to do that for you as well.
Hmm.
And that's one thing. And I'm very glad. I love to talk about it. I am never afraid of that. And so and the other thing that was coming to my mind with attachment and detachment and all of that, I felt that if we don't incorporate some spirituality or religion or whatever, something in our home when we have our children, then they get out there and society will mold them. So
Hmm.
we need to like get started that way. I mean, I remember my three children, we would go to temple mandirs, and one would be on my right foot, one in the middle, and one on the left foot. And even though they were fast asleep and whatever, but they're there. They're all
Hmm.
grown, they're doing their own thing. But I'm sure they'll remember these things, these little things that they grew up with, even though they're doing their own thing now. So
Yeah.
those are a few little thoughts, that came to mind today. But thank you again for a wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you, Sukdai. Those are such nice thoughts, and it's nice to hear from you. You're not one that we get to hear from regularly, so it's really nice.
I'm not on the road right now.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
such great. I mean, and that's what it is, how we help someone. You pretty much hit it, the nail on the head. I mean, it's like it's simple. Just hear the holy name. Right? And even if they don't have an attachment to it, it's beneficial for them to hear the holy name. So if they're open to it, yeah, sit in their room and sing kirtan, just chant with them. Right? And
Yeah, I
it's
know. I remember my sister-in-law was dying and she was in um that huge cancer hospital in Manhattan. Oh gosh, what is the name? But she was in this unconscious state, and the whole of the Brooklyn, New York Hare Krishna group was there. And the chanting was so loud in that room, and they allowed it. It was so great. I mean, I was so
wow,
happy that it was night and day chanting. Oh my God, it was so nice. And I'm sure that
amazing.
something is hard on our part. So I'm very happy for that. So I'm hoping that someday, um, we can help others that way as well. You know.
Yes. That's why we have
Yeah.
spiritual family. Okay? Like now we're
Yes.
all bound.
Right.
We all have to help each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all connected in that way. And I love what you said about the children too. And children are so impressionable. They're like sponges. Just fill that sponge with some God consciousness and
Yeah.
love.
It's what you're saying, like with social media and everything out there today. If they don't have something to mold them from the inside, then society will mold them.
Hmm.
And we've seen the reality of that so many times.
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
got to get started. you
Yeah,
know.
that's our job, our responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
nice. Huh. So nice to be here with you all today. Does anybody else want to share any final reflection before we end for the day? Serlene, it's nice to have you here. You might be busy with work or school, but we'd love to hear from you. Katie. Anyway, so nice to have you all. Thank you for being here and for sharing your hearts and your wisdom. What a wise group we have. So thank you. And let's try to make this a thing, right? Let's die before we die. Yeah. Thank you. We'll see you on Monday. Well,
Haribol.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.